So I just started the recording. It's nice already seeing in the chat that someone is excited for our webinar. Thank you. So yeah, let's just start. Good afternoon or good morning or good evening, wherever you are at the moment. A very warm welcome to today's webinar from Project Access and the Access Academy on choosing the right university. We are more than delighted to see so many attendees here today, and some of our mentors and students from Project Access from all over the world. So just a brief introduction to what Project Access is. Project Access is an international charity that is tackling inequalities in the higher education scheme. So we are all volunteers, students that are at top universities and that want to share our knowledge and our ideas to make it as accessible as possible. So this global networks of top students is offering a mentoring scheme where you yourself can sign up to become a mentee, and you will be assigned a mentor that is guiding you through the application process, and you will become part of this big network of students from all over the globe. So if you haven't read about our work yet, do check it out and consider becoming a mentor yourself. The Access Academy that is hosting this webinar today is a very important part of Project Access, as it's our repository of knowledge. So we provide resources, webinars, articles, etc. on 3 pillars. First, choosing your academic path, applying to university, and going to university. So this is a resource that is accessible to everyone. And if you ever have questions popping up, do check out the Access Academy on these 3 pillars, and feel free to reach out to PA, to me, to one of our panelists. But enough of Project Access. I would love to introduce the different guests we have here today. And let's just go a quick round around the table. I'm Marlene. I study PP at King's College and currently at Sciences Po in Paris. And very excited to learn more about the US university system today. Ryan, over to you.
Sure. Thanks so much, Marlene. My name is Ryan. I'm from Singapore, currently studying economics at Columbia University. I am also the campus manager for Columbia. With me, I have my team. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. But before that, I'm going to let Joshua, our special guest from PA Harvard, go first, and then maybe you can call on the next person.
So as Ryan has said, my name is Joshua. I'm a first year at Harvard. I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. I'm currently undecided about my major, but I'm probably going to do applied math and economics as well. Yeah. Oh, I guess Sean can go.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Sean. I'm also from Singapore, and I'm a rising senior at Columbia University. Right now, I'm majoring in biology, hoping to go to medical school after this, and I'm also doing a concentration in history. I'll pass it on to Hazel next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hazel. I'm currently a sophomore at Columbia College. I am from China, which is where I am right now, and I'm undecided, but I am probably going to do philosophy. And
I think that leaves me. Hi, everyone. My name is Aiko. I study at Columbia, and I'm currently majoring in computer engineering, and I'm from New York.
Yes, very,
awesome.
Very lovely all having you here. So what this webinar today will look like is that we are kicking off with a presentation on what's it like to study at US University. And then we will leave space in the last half an hour, 40 minutes for you to ask questions. And here you can see on Zoom the Q&A chat in which you can anonymously or individually ask a question, and we will guide through them ourselves. So feel free to ask whatever's on your mind. We're looking forward to start a dialogue with you. The floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Marlene. So let's just get started. This is our overview. Oh, let me go back. Sorry, this is our overview for today. We're going to talk about the factors you should consider when you think about the universities you want to apply to. We're going to talk about why you should apply to Harvard, and we're going to talk about why you should apply to Columbia. And at the very end, there will be a very short Q&A session. Hopefully, we can answer your question. We've prepared some of ours, but if not, we will let you know how you can reach out to us. Just a reminder to all the team members here today, we're going to be really concise just because time limits, right? So just try to keep that in mind. So the first thing that we think is important for you to consider when you apply to university is what you want to study. And we think about this from a very practical standpoint, because when you apply to university, two things, right? So first is you often have to choose what school you're applying to. In some cases like Columbia, you have to choose whether engineering or not, whether in UPenn, you have to choose whether you're applying to business school, the college or not. And sometimes in in other cases, like in Georgetown, you can apply to a very specialized school, which is a school of foreign service. And this is important because after you apply, although you think you can switch very easily, oftentimes the requirements are a bit opaque. So you are best placed to do your research before figuring out what you want to indicate your school preference as. The second thing is majors are important insofar as if you're going for a very exotic major, such as astrophysics or sustainable development, the point is that not every college will offer them. So you should go and do your research and figure out whether or not it is supported by the school you're applying to. Yes, and the interesting thing about US education is the core curriculum. So a lot of the times you will have this core curriculum where you are required to study different courses, different breadth requirements, and most US colleges have some variant of this. The only difference is that some are more extensive. So in the case of Columbia, we really have the full set, and you'll see later. Others are a bit more flexible, and a few take the opposite approach. So some of them have just the one class that you have to take, and everything else is open to you. And a very good example of that is Brown. The other thing we want to talk about is the programs that are on offer, right? So do you want to declare a minor? Do you want to go on student exchange? Do you want to get 2 degrees in the 4 years, or do you want to get a 4+1 degree? All of these things are very important insofar as at the point of entry, you have to decide which university you want to apply to, and that will affect the options that are available to you 4 years down the line. We also want to think about culture, because culture matters, right? Who you're with, the people around you. And some people do well in different types of cultures. Honestly, there are a lot of ways to define culture. If I wanted to say, I could say that, there are very smart people at Harvard, but the same is true at Columbia, right? And also at any top university in the US that you're applying to. So it's very fluffy, right? This concept. We also think about, people are very driven, people are very motivated. These are all things that you will generally find at every top university or every major university in the US. What we think really matters is a couple of things. So size matters because it affects the type of people you'll meet. In a big school, you will get away with not knowing a lot of people, but that also means that you have a lot more opportunities. So let's say if you are into this very obscure extracurricular, chances are a big school is more likely to have that as compared to a smaller school. On the other hand, a smaller school, what they might have is a very strong community. So maybe you will know everybody in your school. Maybe you will get to be friends, very close friends with everybody. And that matters to different people. Location also makes a difference, because when you're in the city, there are many more options beyond the confines of your campus. If you're outside of the city, there's sort of like a balance, right? Because you do have access to the city, but you can stay within the comfort of your campus bubble. And of course, there are a couple of universities in the US that are really located by themselves, in a bit far off places. Let's say like Cornell. But other factors matter as well in terms of region. Sometimes I guess there are regional differences in the way that people, their thinking, in the way that their beliefs, whatever that may be, that could matter to you. Weather might be a factor if let's say you're very keen on experiencing winter for the first time, which I know like a lot of people from, let's say like tropical countries like Singapore, that's a big draw for them. Connectivity, I guess if you're into like exploring all different parts of US, that could matter. Or like, let's say if you really need to be, have that convenience, all the amenities accessible to you, that could matter to you. But yeah, in general, we think that culture can be distilled into very tangible factors, as opposed to that sort of, more fluffy idea of people are smart, people are driven, and so on. Hazel.
Right. So you would want to consider resources that are specific to each university or college as well. So for example, at Columbia, we have individual academic advisors, which could be very helpful in choosing classes, choosing majors, changing majors, and different corresponding questions that you may have. And it's the same with career advising. So you could schedule appointments if they have a career center at the university that you're applying to. So disability services can vary vastly with different universities. Mental health resources. So a writing center is something which a lot of universities have. So if you're writing a research paper, you may not be experienced as a university student, so they can provide professional help for free, and you can schedule appointments to improve your general writing as well as just school projects. And other facilities include housing, which, for example, Columbia has 4 years of guaranteed housing for the undergraduate schools. Different types include, for example, doubles, singles, suite style, on campus, and some, I guess, the surrounding areas for off-campus housing if you want to rent housing outside of the campus, libraries, research labs, which could be very specific to your major. So if you're considering something that is very scientific based, or if you're doing something to do with art, which I was personally considering for architecture. So the studio spaces might be very important, fitness centers and performance venues, which there are plentiful in New York, where Columbia is.
So another factor to consider when thinking about colleges is the extracurricular activities that are offered at each university. So some universities have unique extracurricular activities because of their distinct history or their access to certain resources. So for example, Columbia has a taiko drum club, and Virginia Tech has a theme park engineering and design club. And other schools, because of their unique histories with fraternities or sororities, have alternative social clubs like final clubs and eating clubs. And the third category is clubs that focus on a specific field. So for example, UPenn has a business school, and because of that, it has a lot of clubs that are about finance and consulting and preparing students to enter those career paths. But on the whole, most universities offer similar extracurriculars, and they can be broken down like into several categories that you'll see over and over again. So for example, academic clubs, community service clubs, media clubs, political or cultural clubs, sport clubs, student government type organizations, and religious clubs. And another thing is that if you notice that a school doesn't have a club that you would like to be part of, you can start that organization yourself. So overall, extracurricular activities should be a factor in your decision making, but it shouldn't be the most important factor. A definitely much more important factor is finances. So you should have the goal in mind of graduating as loan-free as possible. And to do that, especially for international students, there are sort of two buckets of schools that you should be aware of. The first is universal need blind, which are schools that do not consider or don't take into account whether or not you can pay full price. And then if you get in, these schools will provide enough aid that you can attend. So those schools are Harvard, Yale, MIT, Princeton, and Amherst. And on the right, the second bucket is need aware with full aid. This means that for international students, they will take into account whether or not you can pay full price, but if they let you in, they'll provide enough aid to ensure that you can attend. And so those schools are listed here. And a key next to any of these schools means that Project Access has a team there. So it's possible to get a Project Access mentor directly from that school. And also as a side note, UPenn is placed in the second bucket here, but for Mexican and Canadian students, it's actually universal need blind. So that's another detail you should be aware of. Another thing to take note of is that financial aid policies often change, or not often change, but sometimes they change from year to year. And so you should definitely double check as you're applying to find out which policies apply to you and what that means for your application. You should also be aware of the fact that there are often two different admissions processes. One is early action and the second is early decision. And they sound very similar, but there's an important difference, which is that early action is non-binding. So you apply early and they give you a decision as to whether or not they'd like to let you attend, but you're not forced to attend that school. You can still do other applications. On the other hand, early decision is binding. And if they let you in, they want you to withdraw your application from every other university. So if you know that you're going to need to compare financial aid packages, you should definitely consider whether or not you want to commit that early to a school. And you should also look out for merit or need-based scholarship options to supplement aid.
Thanks, Aiko. This slide, we really want to think about the high-level strategy to applying for US universities. And the reason why we want to talk about it is because it could be very different for somebody applying from within the US and somebody applying from outside. And the key difference is that if you are applying from outside, so if you're an international student, you have many alternatives available to you. And our point here is also that we want to encourage international students to think that, you know, it's okay for you to apply to mostly or only reach universities in the US, provided you have other safeties in your home country or other places that we have mentioned here, like UK, Canada, Europe, or Singapore. And this is very important to get right because you don't want to end up going to a school that, for all intents and purposes, is, let's say, not as ideal as an option that you have at home or nearer to home. And this option that you have at home or nearer to home might be cheaper as well. So if that is a factor for you, we really want to encourage you to think more broadly and be more open to the idea of maybe applying to different places, as well as the second part here, which is to set conditions and hold yourself accountable to them, right? So let's say I will only study in the US if I don't have to take on student loan, right? For example, so that could be my condition for myself. And I think the important thing is from the outset, you already know your family's financial context. And as much as, you know, a Harvard education or Columbia education is that much, I don't know, attractive to people, it's very important for you to be grounded in a sense that, okay, you're going to do it, right? But you're going to apply, but you won't do it at the expense of, you know, however many years of having to pay back a loan, right? So I think this is very important. And I really want to emphasize this to you. Our mentors, generally speaking, those with international backgrounds, have a lot of experience helping people apply to countries such as the UK, and they have their own experience applying to countries, their home country as well. So if this is something you're thinking about, please reach out to your mentor in the future when you get paired about this and really walk through the process very carefully. And now the fun part.
So hi everyone. I guess what has been said, just like to echo, is very important. I'd want you guys like definitely consider a lot of what has been said in terms of like strategy when prioritizing which schools you want to get into and like why you want to get into. So just to give a bit of a personal account of my why Harvard. I initially didn't apply to Harvard in the first decision cycle because I thought I couldn't get in. I mean, whoever thinks like they're going to apply to Harvard and get in. So I didn't apply to Harvard, I applied to another school. I got rejected from that school and then applied to Harvard for the regular decision cycle, and I got in. So I am generally going to talk about general factors. These factors vary from like person to person. Even if you go to Harvard and ask people why they chose Harvard, people often have like various different reasons as to why they chose Harvard. But I'm just going to talk about like general reasons as to why I think Harvard is a good school for you to apply to. So just a few facts about Harvard. It was founded in 1636. It's actually the oldest institution of higher learning in the US. We are about 6,700 undergrads. Not as diverse as Columbia, that I'll have to say. Very many faculty. That's a very good student faculty ratio because like you can easily get help and you have easy access to your faculty. We have over 50 fields of study. That's like not necessarily concentrations. For example, if it's a certain topic or certain subjects, and then there's concentrations under that. So concentration is like what other universities would say majors. At Harvard, they're called concentrations. I don't know why. With 3,700 courses. So that's like a wide variety of courses. So Harvard has a liberal arts sort of curriculum. So irrespective of like the major you are going to take, you have certain courses that you have to take for your major, but then you can also always take other courses. An example is like I'm probably doing applied math, but this semester I'm taking a class in like political science and so it's been interesting. And yeah, we have 8 American presidents who have gone through Harvard. So I mean, that's something you can consider. So I think one of the most important or one of the most unique aspects of the Harvard experience is the residential life. So mostly what happens after you get your acceptances and before you join first year, you're going to fill out a few forms and you get assigned into like first year housing. So it's housing that is specific for first years, and it's often like a very good chance for you to get, it's a good community for first years, a good chance for you to get to meet new people. So you'll often be in like first year circles. You'll specifically eat at the first year dining hall. Yes. And then I think every year you get assigned an advisor. So it usually depends. You'll have like your academic advisor to like help you with your academic coursework and like course load. And then you'll also have like a residential advisor, or what we call proctors, who's just like going to help you with general easing into the school culture and just navigating school life outside of the academics, whether it's like extracurriculars. You'll also get paired with an upperclassman. So I think like for a lot of people that advising to be able to have an advising program and like a very strong advising program was a good motivation to pick Harvard. And Boston is a city college. There's like very, very many schools in Boston. And for me personally, this was one of the reasons, because as an international, I wanted to go to a place where I'm also like in touch with, there's like a good international community. And like with going to Harvard, even though like there is like a fair amount of internationals at Harvard, but there's like a larger community because there are very many schools in Boston. MIT is literally across the river. So yeah. I guess the next thing is resources, and this is one of the things Harvard is most famous for. Is there's plenty of resources for one to use. I've had really, really good experiences with faculty, just like from introductory courses, you meet people who have been working. For example, I was taking an introductory to economics class, and my professor just happens to have worked for the Council of Economic Advisors for the Obama administration. So there's usually this famous quote at Harvard that Harvard recruits the best students to work with the best faculty. So you're going to meet literally the best professors, people who are leading research in their field. There's also plenty of funded opportunities, especially if, as a low-income student, that was a factor to consider, such that like if you go for study abroad and you're on financial aid, you don't have to worry about expenses because they're going to cover the full amount. They literally transfer your aid to wherever you're going for study abroad. There's also funded some opportunities. So if you're doing research, if you're doing, for example, an unpaid internship, you get funding to be able to do that. In terms of like course-wise, in terms of academics, you also get access to a variety of courses, and you can cross-register. You can take classes that are offered at MIT. You can take classes at the law school and at the Kennedy School of Government. So that's also a good thing to consider. Yeah. And finally, one of the best reasons actually is financial aid. Harvard has good aid, like really, really good aid. So if the cost of attendance is something that is bugging you, I think Harvard is gonna be the place for you because they pay for everything. And I mean everything, literally everything, from your transport, from, for example, if you're an international student, they'll cater for that, and their financial aid is like really good. So if anything happens, if something happens and the financial status of your family has to change, Harvard is going to consider that and adjust your aid accordingly. So those are just some of the few reasons that I think generally you should apply to Harvard. There are much more, there are many more reasons, but just like to give an overview of why you should apply to Harvard.
Okay, so next I'm going to talk about reasons that you might want to consider Columbia. I'm a rising senior at Columbia, so I've spent 3 years here now, and I've really, really enjoyed my time here so far, and I'm excited to tell you about it. So here are some quick facts about Columbia University. We were founded in 1754 as King's College, and we are the oldest university in New York State. If you're familiar with the musical Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton sings about how he got a scholarship to King's College, and that's us. He attended Columbia back when it was called King's College in the 1700s, amongst many other illustrious alumni. We have over 6,000 undergraduate students, and over half of us are students of color, and 18% of us are first-generation college students. If you're an international student like myself, you definitely won't feel out of place at Columbia because 21% of our undergraduate student body is made up of international students, and we actually have the 4th largest international student population in all of the United States. We have over 100 undergraduate majors and concentrations, and there's definitely a lot of flexibility there. I saw a question about whether it's feasible to do multiple majors and concentrations, and at least at Columbia, it's definitely possible. I'm studying biology and history, which are two very, very different subjects. And we also have over 500 student-led clubs and organizations for you to find your fit. Academically, we're not too bad either. 84 Nobel laureates, past and present, have been alumni or current and former faculty of Columbia University. So one of the defining things academically about Columbia, which is something that Ryan briefly brought up, is the core curriculum. And especially if you're going to be in Columbia College, which is a liberal arts college of Columbia, it's a big part of your education. And this is a rough overview of what you would go through as a Columbia College student. In your first year, you do Lit Hum, which is a year-long course on masterpieces of Western literature. And that's followed up in your second year by CC, Contemporary Civilization, which is another year-long course on philosophy and politics mainly. In your first year, you also do Frontiers of Science, which is an introductory science course in areas as diverse as astrophysics and neuroscience. And it's pretty amazing because they break it down so that even the humanities majors understand what's going on. And you also have university writing, which is definitely important because academic writing in university takes a lot of getting used to. To kind of balance out the Western-centric focus of Lit Hum and CC, we also have a global core requirement, which focuses on cultures, politics, history outside of the Western world. For example, last semester, for the global core requirement, I took a course on the history of the Ottoman Empire, which is fascinating. We also have classes in art, music, science, languages, and we actually have a physical education requirement as well, which includes a swim test. So you have to learn to swim to graduate from Columbia, which is very interesting. But I think the big reason, and most Columbia students would tell you the main reason that they want to go to Columbia, is the fact that we are in New York City. The Dean of Columbia College, James Valentini, always talks about how we're the greatest university in the greatest city in the world, and I'm inclined to agree. You will never run out of things to do in your free time in New York. Museums, Broadway theaters, many of which you can go to for free as a Columbia student. And there are so many other wonderful institutions in terms of academics, research, service that Columbia collaborates with, and that you personally can collaborate with. For instance, I have a friend who's a computer science major, and he helps out with the computational work at a lab at Memorial Sloan Kettering, which is a world-class cancer center in New York City. Your professors definitely factor in the fact that you're in New York City in their curriculums for classes. So in the year and a half that I was in New York City, pre-COVID, of course, I had field trips to the Met, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, the Cloisters, which is an offshoot of the Met focusing on medieval art. And I also saw a Broadway musical called Hadestown, all completely for free, of course, because Columbia. And yeah, it's just a fascinating place to learn. And of course, if you're thinking about career opportunities after this, I cannot overstate how convenient and how powerful it is to be studying in New York City, especially if you're thinking about working in a field that is centered in the city. If you want to go for networking sessions, coffee chats, even job interviews, all these things are just a subway ride away. And I don't think there's any other top university that can really say that, but it's just New York City is a big part of what makes Columbia so great. So I mentioned briefly earlier that the core curriculum that I showed you was for Columbia College. And it's actually because we have 4 undergraduate colleges at Columbia University. So first of all, you have Columbia College, which is the oldest constituent college, the liberal arts college. You also have SEAS, the School of Engineering and Applied Science, which is where ICO goes to, which is our engineering school. We also have GS, the School of General Studies, which is also a liberal arts college, but for non-traditional students, which Ryan goes to. I believe you have to have had at least a year of disruption in your education. For example, Ryan served in the Singapore military for 2 years, and that's why he's in GS. And they bring so much diversity to our undergraduate student population that you really don't see anywhere else. And of course, we have a women's only college as well called Barnard College, which is also another really interesting perspective. So that's about it for Columbia, I think. And I think the Q&A session is next.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Again, a really big thank you to all of our speakers today. I think we have a good amount of time left for Q&A. But the very first thing that I want to say is we get this question a lot, which is, how do I learn about a college? And I just wanted to address it right at the outset. I think the best way to learn about college, of course, go to the website, do your Google search, do your Google research, read the campus newspaper, watch college YouTubers, go for info sessions like these. And very importantly, and this is the secret tip, right? You should talk to people like us, current students, or you should talk to people who are alums, or you should talk to admissions officers. I think the really big differentiating factor is once you talk to somebody who's actually been at the school, and they can give you the best perspective on what it's like there and all the different things that you wouldn't find on a website otherwise. So how this Q&A session is going to work, I believe you can raise your hand, or I'm not sure, but let's see, if you have a question, drop it in the Q&A box and we will go through the list of questions. We also have a couple of prepared questions. And I think, these are ones that we thought a lot of people asked. So yeah, without further ado, I think the first question, just to get the ball rolling, is I want to ask all of the students, all of these team members here, how would you describe the students and culture at Harvard/Columbia? And let's go with Aiko.
Well, my perspective on this is kind of unique because I haven't actually attended Columbia in person. As a freshman, my entire year was virtual. But I will say that everyone, like all of my interactions that I had through Zoom or through GroupMe, everyone was very supportive of each other. And I think sometimes, especially these schools, get their reputation for like students being very cutthroat or competitive, but I didn't get that feeling at all.
Yeah.
Oh, Joshua.
Yeah. I'd say the same for Harvard. There's this stereotype that like people who go to Harvard are like type A personalities who like we always just like do books and like are really competitive. But I'd say like the students, one of like the best things about Harvard, like the people you're going to meet there, like these are people with like vast experiences from like very, very different backgrounds. And like students are very like supportive of each other, and like it's a very welcoming culture in the school. And so yeah, contrary to like popular belief, students are very like supportive, and yeah, people just like sort of understand and like get each other. So I'd say that's a little bit like the culture at Harvard.
Sean, do you want to jump in, seeing as you are the most experienced of all of us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I definitely agree with what Aiko said about students at Columbia having a reputation for being competitive, but in reality, definitely not being that way. And I've really enjoyed working with all my classmates, friends at Columbia, for sure. Yeah.
Great. Oh. All right, so the next question we have, let's see. Let's try to take one from the Q&A box. So I have here a question by Johan. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Johan asks, how do you define a strong applicant? Anybody who wants to take the question?
Yeah, I guess I can answer. So for Harvard, I think just like going through the application process and what I've had, and like the culture at the school, it's just basically, they sort of want people who are very passionate about like what they do. It's sort of, in as much as like you're a well-rounded student, they want to see that there's something that you're going, if you go to the school, you sort of have an objective or something that you would like to achieve. And this usually varies. It doesn't necessarily have to be, or you want to come up with like the vaccine or like a cure for like a chronic disease. It's almost often the simplest of things that you may not think that confer passion, but it's something that the admissions officer can see that you've really put a lot of time and effort into this. It may be just a few like initiatives in your community. It may be the fact that you are a firstborn and like you're a low income student, and a lot of your experience has been centered around you taking care of your siblings and like having to worry about them a lot. Like that shows that you're someone who's like dedicated towards something. So it's a holistic admission process, and they want like a very diverse student body. So don't feel the pressure to conform to one set specific model of like what a strong application is, but there are certain characteristics that, you know, are generally common to very many strong applicants. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Joshua. I guess I will just add on as well. I think the most obvious thing in response to this question is obviously try your best academically. But the new caveat is that, you know, circumstances are different. A lot of schools have been disrupted. So I think Harvard and Columbia both understand that. And you'll see that as well in the messaging they have put out, that they really know that, you know, these incoming students have worked really hard. It's not their fault, right, that COVID happened. A lot of these disruptions, nobody could have seen that coming. So just know that whatever circumstance you're in, try your best to explain that as well, so that people can look at your application in context, right? So whatever benchmark they're setting isn't, you know, unfair to you. The other thing is obviously also that do stuff that you like and try to do them well. I think that's the easiest way I can distill for you. I get a couple of students, you know, that I mentor. They ask me like, what's the best extracurricular to work on, to pursue? And honestly, the answer is it's up to you, right? Because we want to see, like, the admissions office, I think, wants to see people who have their own passions, people who care about something, and then who work very hard to make an impact through whatever thing they're doing. So there is really no standard answer, and I think a lot of it you have to dig really deep yourself, like what you're interested in, to find out like how you can be putting forward the best application you can. Okay, I have another question that was really commonly asked. Is because of the COVID pandemic as well, to what extent are gap year students at a disadvantage? Anybody want to take this question?
I think, Ryan, you would have a pretty good perspective on that, given that you applied to general studies. And yeah, there have been some questions specifically about GS as well, about whether you need to apply to GS if you're taking a gap year, for example. So maybe, you know, you could give your perspective on that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sean. I think it's really interesting. Like, some people have gap years forced onto them. I guess now a lot of people are in the same situation as well. So don't worry. I think what you do with the gap year is most important, right? So in the gap year, there's so many things available to you. Online courses, you could be working a job, you could be you know, doing something for your family, you know, that's really important as well. But most of all, right, I don't think you are at a disadvantage. What I will say is how you make use of your gap year is what really you know, defines whether you are like, gives you that advantage. So let's say if you spend the time doing nothing, or, you know, you don't really have anything to show for it, then that's a bit tricky. But if, let's say, you are able to turn this gap year into something that is, you know, a story like, oh, okay, I decided to volunteer giving out vaccinations, or I decided to do swabs for people, I think that could be a really meaningful story. And I wouldn't say you're at a disadvantage at all. I think a lot of students, even in normal years, they have been gap year students. And what more, like now during the COVID pandemic, many more students will be coming out from a gap year. And it's up to you to sort of tell your story, let the universities know like what you did during your 1 year free time. Okay, let's see. Okay, this is a good one. I want to ask, especially some of the newer college students here, what helped you to stand out in your college application? Anyone, like, especially Aiko or Hazel?
I can go. So honestly, I think there's no way to know for sure exactly what about your application made you stand out, or made the admissions committee decide that they want you to attend this school. But I think one thing that I did is that I tied the extracurricular activities I did into sort of a narrative about what kind of person I turned into over the course of high school, and I used that to write my personal essay. So I think maybe that was it, but there's really no way to know.
Yeah, so I'm not sure either, but I guess for my essay, I wrote about how I, as a person, I really enjoy little things, like everyday, daily things. And that's, for me, the important things. And I guess that was, for me, like a unique perspective that might have been different to other people. But then also I applied with a portfolio. So I think that also helped me because I was considering an architecture major. And yeah, so definitely try to bring out who you are and what you think is important to you. And if you have a portfolio or some music that you want to share, definitely there are opportunities to do that.
Right. Yeah. Thanks so much, Aiko and Hazel. Right now, I'm looking at the Q&A box, and I see quite a number of questions about Columbia College and GS. So maybe we can try to answer that. Just as for start, to be very specific, the School of General Studies, we do the core curriculum as well. We get to take part in all of the club activities, all that. The difference is we have at least a break of 1 year in education. So a lot of people go through the military and they are either encouraged or they apply directly to the School of General Studies, or they are undertaking a dual degree. So you will see, and this is a very good option for some of you people who are very interested in an international experience. People who want to study at places like Sciences Po in France, Hong Kong University in Hong Kong, and I think a number of other universities. I'm sorry, I can't give them to you right now, but I know like at least 2 or 3 other universities out there. And the point is, Columbia is 4 colleges, 1 university. The School of General Studies is really for a certain kind of applicant. So it's not like whoever wants to apply can apply. And by that same token, you have to think for yourself, like, do you fit the criteria? So like, are you actually 1 year out from studies? Are you actually wanting to do a dual degree program? And of course, the experience is not the same. Very important. The experience is not the same as, let's say, Columbia College. But then again, like the experiences differ from Columbia College to SEAS, our engineering school, to Barnard College. So there really is no, I guess there's no issue there. Let's see, I have one more question. Okay, Benjamin asked, in Denmark, our last year in high school is similar to the first year in college. So it's a bit of a trick question, I think, because Columbia does award entrance credits. So for instance, if you took the A levels, you will get some form of entrance credits, which I got. And that will allow you to either get exempted from certain starter classes, or you can also get some credits knocked off. And of course, the rules differ from year to year, but in general, they do give credits. It's just a matter of whether or not you qualify. Okay, now I want to ask a Harvard question. Let's see. I guess one question that I got in the sign up form for Harvard is, what's a day in the life of a Harvard student?
Yeah, so I just like Aiko, haven't actually like attended in-person school. So I'm only like give an experience on Zoom. So typically, because I live in Kenya, so that means we are 8 or 7 hours ahead of Eastern time. That's what the time at which like classes are held at Harvard. So typically my day, my school day actually starts at 5 in the evening, though I wake up much earlier than that. So I'd wake up in the morning, just like 9 or 8 Kenyan time, do a bit of assignments till 5. So 5 classes start, I'll attend classes from 5 to around 9 or 10:15 in the night. That's in my time. And then after that, I often have like 1 or 2 meetings, club meetings to attend. So with the pandemic and like as a first year, it hasn't been like that busy in terms of like a variety of schedules. It's been like classes, meetings, like it's not as exciting as it is in person. So Unfortunately, I haven't like gone to campus in person to give you the complete Harvard experience.
Yeah, and I think that experience is also going to be, it's still going to be pretty different from what we might expect. And we don't know like if these things will stick or, you know, whether they'll change. But yeah, thanks Joshua for giving that really great breakdown. So I see one question here that I can very quickly answer is, does early decision help an applicant's chances? I will say that early applications in general, you can go look at the numbers, the acceptance rates tend to be higher. And that could be for various reasons, right? Some people explain it as, you know, these are the more qualified, so-called more qualified applicants applying. Therefore, it makes sense that these people are accepted in higher percentages. So that's one way of explaining. Another way is these people apply early, and some admissions officers say that that shows they are very interested in their school. So for that reason, they are more inclined to accept you early. I think what is without doubt is, if you feel confident in your application as it is, there's really no reason for you not to apply early. So if you're ready by the early decision or early application point, like by all means go for it. The only issue is, again, like what Aiko said about financial aid. If you need to compare, then you shouldn't do binding early decision, because that will impair your ability to compare the different packages. I want to ask one last question and I know there are so many out there, but there is really very little time. But this question is very important. Is what did you do like in terms of extracurriculars? I want to ask all of our team members here, and if you could just mention a few of the things that you did.
Yeah, I guess I could start. So I have a really unique perspective actually, in that I only chose to study biology and aim for medical school after I graduated from high school. So my profile as an applicant was very different at the point of applying to Columbia, which I guess kind of answers some questions that I've seen about how difficult is it to switch between majors and stuff like that. You can choose to study something completely different from what you indicated when you applied, and that's totally okay. But in my case, I was hoping to study, political science and economics, and my application was very much focused on that. So I was very involved in Model UN. I think I went to over 10 conferences around the world, in Singapore, in Malaysia, in the Netherlands even, including as a student officer, basically chairing the debate for some of those. I also was really lucky in that I managed to get an internship over the summer helping out a professor at the Earth Institute at Columbia, which was really helpful and really solidified, my desire to like aim for a place at Columbia. Other than that, I would say that I had a lot more of depth than breadth, in that I definitely didn't fill up all 10 slots in the common application for your activities, but I had a couple of activities that I went into in a lot of depth. Like I set up a history society in my school, which didn't really exist at that point before. So kind of creating something and working on it from the ground up, that's something that universities definitely value. Yeah, and apart from that, like volunteering, community service, things like that as well. Yeah, depth over breadth.
Anyone else?
I can sort of, oh, you go.
Okay. Yeah, so I'd say like the depth of a breadth thing like makes a lot of sense. Like that's what I'd say should be your mindset. I didn't do, and I'm just gonna be honest, I didn't do anything spectacular or like world class. I like did debate. I did a few. I was in a few environmental initiatives, and yeah, that was pretty much it. Like I didn't have. I also got an internship after high school, because like how high schools in Kenya are very academic oriented. So like extracurriculars are not such a thing. So what happens is you may be like, a lot of the application process is like mirrored towards like an American student. So most of the extracurriculars that you would think make the most sense are the extracurriculars that are offered, say, mostly by American schools. But I think going into the application process, you have to know that these things you did outside of class do actually count for extracurricular activities, and it doesn't necessarily have to look like what American students often like generally do. But that being said, I'd say like being passionate about something, because like going into my application, I was very, very passionate and still am about like women rights and like gender equality. So a lot of like the extracurriculars I did in high school often had that agenda in mind, and I think that worked really well for my application. So again, depth of a breadth.
I was basically just going to agree with what Joshua and Sean said about depth over breadth. It can really support your application if you show that you did one or two extracurriculars, but you did them in a way that shows progression. So maybe you started off in Key Club as a member, and then over time you became a board member or something like that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much for answering the questions, guys. I will just add on in that when you graduate, I know in international schools or students from international schools or students with international background, sorry, there's usually a little bit of space in between when you graduate and when you start university. So in those cases, highly encourage you to find something that you want to do and make the use of it. So because I had some time before I enlisted for the army, I decided to intern at the foreign ministry of my home country. And I was able to accompany this Laos vice foreign minister as a liaison officer. So that was really like something that I thought made me stand out. I don't think a lot of people have had the chance to accompany like a vice foreign minister for his, working dinners, functions, all of that. So yeah, just try to think of, ways in which you can show off your passions. Like Sean, I also did a lot of Model UN, so I won't talk too much about that. But yeah. Okay. I saw a question that I accidentally pressed the wrong button on, but it asked like what GPA is the right GPA, and the answer to that very quickly is that is like, of course, like the higher the better in all cases, or like in most cases, higher the better. But depending on your circumstances, depending on your context, I think people will look at your application differently, right? For instance, in places like, or I won't give specific examples, but in certain places, it can be near impossible to get the perfect score, and nobody will expect you to get the perfect score because there are admissions officers who are trained for the regions that they cover. So you can be very assured that wherever you're applying from, there are people there who understand what's going on in your country, in your region. And thank you so much to the team for answering the questions that we have in the Q&A box. I just want to say before we wrap up that there are really so many good questions and we want to get to all of them, but we can't. So we have our emails here, and I highly encourage you to reach out to us. But of course, like for my team members, they are really busy as well. They are students. Try your best to be like, I don't know, polite and nice and all that. I'm sure they'll appreciate it. The very last thing I want to ask everyone here is, what is one piece of advice you would give to people in the audience today?
I would just say try your best, be yourself, and everything happens for a reason. And yeah, don't get too hung up on one university, and hopefully it all goes well for you. Good luck, everyone.
Yeah, I think the advice that I give to my project access mentees and that I would give to you as well is that you never know until you try. I definitely didn't expect that I would be where I am right now. But yeah, if you don't go for it, you don't submit that application, your chances are 0%, right? So no matter how daunting it may seem, no matter how much you might feel like, there's no way I can fit in these top US universities, just go for it. You never know until you try. Good luck.
I would say to keep in mind the fact that a lot of the college admissions process is based on factors that you can't control or even factors that might seem random to you. So don't take rejection or acceptance even that personally. And good luck.
Yeah, just like off of that note, there's this thing that usually is written in like rejection letters. I got quite a couple of them, which like it's usually like such a cliche statement that says the application process is not a reflection of who you are, like of your capabilities as an applicant. And it may not seem to you at that moment, but it's a very crucial, important piece of information to go into the application process with. So just like do your best and just know you'll end up where you are supposed to be. Yeah.
Right. Thanks so much, guys. And for me, I would just like to say thank you, right, to the University of Chicago for deferring and then rejecting me because I got to be at Columbia. And I'm so happy that, I didn't end up going like to U Chicago. No offense to whoever's studying there. But looking back, it doesn't really make sense like why you got rejected and like whether or not like different schools accepted you. I think what matters is going forward, like always have a purpose and always be, cognizant of this fact that no matter where you go, there are so many different paths. And sometimes you get rejected for really good reasons that come up afterwards. So I hope that sort of assuages like everyone's concerns here. And last thing, I would just want to shout out again, like if you need our help, like we are here for you. Take a screenshot of this slide and then you can email us directly. We would be more than happy to talk to you. And yeah, that is it for me. Thank you so much, everyone. I will now hand the time back to Malin if she is here.
Yes. Thank you so
Awesome.
much. It was very exciting for me myself to have an insight from the UK perspective into the US perspective. So thank you everyone for joining and participating. If you want to have a look back at this webinar, you can find it on our Access Academy webpage as well as on our Project Access YouTube webpage. So please do look up if you might be interested in signing up as a mentee for the Project Access mentoring scheme, and check out our Access Academy. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to our panelists or to myself, marlene.bornemann@projectaccess.org. So yes, all the best. Have a lovely Sunday, and thank you everyone for joining. Take care. I will stop the recording.